No one stood up and said, hi, I'm a Democrat and I have actual fucking testicles.
There was a great story in The Atlantic this week by a friend of mine, Mark Lubitz, about Obama's sort of chill pill kind of attitude. I do not know where this man is. Like, I'm sorry. There is not a strong Democrat yet who has emerged. And it could be someone who announces for president. That's a great way to do it. But the only person with the gravitas, not just when he feels like it, not just when he wants to make some announcement and then he goes off and plays basketball with celebrities. I was trying to think who could do this and create a nationwide problem for Trump. And it is only Obama. It is only Obama. I think right now Barack Obama's got to stand the fuck up and stop playing basketball and going to celebrity things. He's got to stop.
He did the whole, if this were me, can you imagine if I did that?
Imagine if I had done any of this.
But I think, quite frankly, he has such a nice life and he's so focused on maintaining his brand equity. I don't think he wants to take the risk. I agree with you. I think he should. I don't think he will.
I think he's the only one who could, and he should do it, and it's his duty as an American citizen. Obama, get off your tail.
Oh my gosh, Becky, look at her merch. I miss the good old days when all I had to do was toss the videos. If you were there, then you know. Real in Times Square. Hit my 2-way, I'll be there. Everybody wanna be a VJ. Do you miss the 90s like I did? Life was just so simple. We can't go back, but tell me what you if you miss the 90s like I did. Then you can wear your 90s love on baby just for you.
Good morning and welcome to another edition of Let It Be Known. And everybody did want to be a VJ and have thoughts on that whole.
Peace and love, everybody. I'm Neil Anderson.
Go ahead, Neil. Introduce yourself.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Let It Be Known. And we have a lot of headlines to jump into today.
Okay, so one of us must be freezing or something here. I'm not sure which, but I have a lot to say about. Those people I think have a lot of nerve going in on Barack Obama. He's done. Why don't you go in on George Bush? I mean, Obama did his 2 terms. What is he supposed to do now? It's so bizarre that they were really going in on Barack Obama. And I'm not here to defend Obama, but my goodness, the guy was president like 3 terms ago. Give it a rest.
Yeah, I think, Democrats are just looking for the next leader in the party. There was an article that came out in the Baltimore Sun, I believe it was, that Wes Moore was spotted having a barbecue with some high Democratic donors. And they say that although he said that he's not planning on running, on the back end of things, he's shaking hands and taking, conversations with some high Democratic donors. And we know that, what's his name? George Clooney said on CNN that he looks like the one. And we know George Clooney has a lot to say when it comes to the Democratic Party. So, we'll see. They're talking about Obama. Other people are talking about Wes Moore.
Well, yeah, I just think, the way to get off your couch and stop playing basketball and come on. The man it's his life. He's living his life. And it's bad for everyone. But as Austin says, too many of us were whining about Obama speaking down to black men. What did he say? Don't boo, vote. Nancy Wall says they always want the black people to jump in. Well, the white ones say something. Look, I don't understand this. I know it's desperate. Everyone's desperate. It's desperation time. But here's the other side of the coin. Y'all need to stop talking about some of these Democrats. Stop cutting these selfish deals that you are cutting for yourselves and start acting on behalf of your constituents. And maybe that'll help. Maybe that'll help. But to go in on Obama is like this is just absolutely ludicrous, from where I sit anyway.
Yeah, there's a picture he posted this week. Sasha celebrated a birthday, and he was talking about how proud he is of his daughters. And the Obamas, basically are living their soft era right now. Michelle is doing podcasts, writing books, talking about she's going to do things the way she wants to do it. And Obama is doing things, but he's doing the things that he's passionate about. And, he's having conversations quietly. He's making his presence known quietly. For him to be out in front right now, he's not the president. All eyes on Donald Trump and his clan.
Yeah, I will say, as David Youngblood mentioned, I heard somebody else mention this too, that if the former presidents were to step up and make a statement, at least together, it could land pretty well. But again, and we're going to get to a story about a big time celebrity saying why exactly she's not really been forcefully speaking up, and it makes sense when you think about it. But the other video we saw, we'll get more into that later, and more news and headlines a little bit later. But of course, we'd be remiss if we don't mention, at least right now, the death of Ananda Lewis, who touched so many people. We'll get more into that a little bit later, but we are going to get into that, folks. Ananda Lewis has died at the age of 52. Also, this morning, still following this, we talked a little bit about this yesterday, but Donald Trump's return to the White House in 2024 has reignited questions about election integrity, particularly after his remarks thanking Elon Musk for what he called a, quote, landslide win in Pennsylvania, where Trump says he knows those computers better than anybody. All those vote counting computers, he said. Well, yesterday, or this week anyway, a Wisconsin nonprofit has filed a legal complaint accusing Elon Musk and his America PAC and a Musk affiliated group called United States of America, Inc. Imagine that, United States of America, Inc. Of violating state election laws by bribing voters. The Wisconsin Democracy Campaign and two voters alleged that Elon handed out $1 million checks, and that his PAC paid $100 to registered voters who signed petitions and gave their contact information. Now, the Wisconsin law says that you can't offer anything of value over $1 to encourage someone to vote. So the complaint is citing these violations of the state's lottery ban, and the plaintiffs are asking the court to declare the actions illegal. So it's really interesting that we're starting to see, and I saw a story this morning talking about now all of a sudden, other cities, other jurisdictions are stepping up and questioning their ballots.
Oh yeah, we're gonna have there's a lot going on with our elections that I think, as time and history tells, there's been some tampering. We've covered a couple of stories this week, from voter fraud allegedly by Republicans, and we're talking about maybe 30 people out of how many people that are in the United States. And then we have that ballot box issue with that company that's based in Alabama that provides like over 40% of the ballot machines across our country, and how they've changed certain things within the ballot boxes and nobody knew about it. And so it definitely sounds like an episode of Scandal.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. We do, by the way, have a pop quiz this morning. So we probably want to get to that before we go any further. What is this morning's Black Pop Quiz? Let's check out what the pop quiz is. Okay, drum roll. Black Pop Quiz. Okay. Well, while we wait for the Black Pop Quiz, I guess we can move on to our next topic. So Cardi B is speaking out, but not in the way that many might have expected. In a X Spaces chat, She explained why she's been mostly silent on Trump's aggressive immigration policies. It's not because she's indifferent, it's because she believes her voice could only make things worse. She said Trump gives off, quote, dictatorship vibes, and that if she speaks out, he might retaliate by deporting even more people just to prove a point. She admitted she feels helpless and disconnected from anyone in power, saying that, quote, I don't know anybody in the White House. If I talk about it every single day, he's not going to care. So the question really becomes, when an artist as outspoken as Cardi B fears that her words could trigger more deportations, it's a clear sign that free speech isn't just under threat, it's being weaponized against the most vulnerable. I guess that is really where she's coming from.
For sure. I mean, I think that a lot of celebrities are rethinking their positioning. I mean, the story you just came out of about Obama. People want, to see the people that we appreciate or that can reach a certain market. We want to hear them speak out. But based upon what happened with the Kamala Harris, and she has so many celebrities, that didn't work. And then you have this dictator that is in office. People are just being more choosy about what they say, why they say it, and when they say it. And it's understandably so. And she has a family in foreign countries. So she could be thinking, hey, they might come and deport my family members.
Right. Exactly. So, she has a reputation, Cardi B does, of speaking, giving her thoughts on these matters. And I just found it very interesting. And I found it to be very truthful that this is the type of guy, if she does come hard at him, he's going to retaliate in that type of way, that more people are going to get hurt. So in a lot of ways, you want to say good for her for even recognizing that.
Right, for sure. Because Cardi B does have a lot of power when it comes to music and pop culture. But I think the question that Democrats are trying to figure out is, do celebrities have the power to push people to the polls? And that there's still a question mark about that. It worked for Obama because Obama kind of was bigger than the celebrity, and it was just an addition to. But we saw with Kamala Harris, as many celebrities from Beyonce to Bruce Springsteen, all these people coming out for her, it still wasn't enough. So I think it still just depends on the candidate more so than it does the backing that you have.
I also think you mentioned that Obama was bigger than the celebrity. I don't know that that's necessarily the case in his first run. Certainly in his second run, he became bigger than anybody. But I think he did something that has not been repeated. I mean, he galvanized and energized people who just progressives that wasn't necessarily Democrats. I don't think you mentioned that recently, but also the young. I remember on college campuses everywhere, there was this huge groundswell, no matter what campus you went on, white campuses, black campuses. This was all about Obama. The kids were galvanized. And I think that many of these, certainly the Democrats, went away from the young people and sort of left them in the dust. And those were the ones who were really energized, and they really rock, as MTV said, rock the vote. They really did.
Yeah. They did, but it was all based upon the candidate, which was my point. The candidate it was something about him that moved the crowd. Like a MC would say, he moved the crowd. He inspired the people. He galvanized all of us. I remember being at the Sentinel, and at the time, Danny Bakewell Sr. and Brenda March Mitchell was supporting Hillary. And I worked for Rock the Vote during that MTV time. And the first time I was able to meet Barack Obama, he was a senator. And ironically, we honored Barack Obama and John McCain. Both of them were senators in DC for the Rock the Vote Awards. I think it was back in 2004 or something. But then they would later run off against each other. But at that time, Mr. Bakewell and Miss Brenda was Clinton, because most of our elders within the Black community couldn't see a Black man being president. But I was so passionate about it. Miss Brenda came to me and she said, we tell y'all that y'all could do and be anything that you want to be. And this Black man is running for president. And so we gonna support y'all because we see that y'all supporting him. And from that moment on, I mean, we was Obama, 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 Obama. But, that is what he did. He didn't need celebrities to do that. It was just something about him that was different. Like
Yeah,
when we seen him, it was different. When we seen him speak at the DNC and he gave that speech, The Audacity of Hope, something resonated with not just Black folks, white folks, everybody, and celebrities, and we just all followed him and the Obama's lead.
Yeah, and I think too, the time it was, there was so much after 9/11 going on, and people, it was interesting about that time too. People were starting to see their rights taken away from them. You remember we hadn't had the type of scrutiny, and I'm glad we have the scrutiny at the airports that we do have, but we didn't have it then until 9/11. And it was chaos because you had Bush going after Baghdad and then Afghanistan, and that was such it was a Vietnam-like situation because a lot of people felt the country had no business, the U.S. had no business in Iraq or, for that matter, Afghanistan. And I think Obama really, as you mentioned, that DNC speech, folks held on to that. It was something that really, as you say, galvanized folks. And again, I think the young folks, he really appealed to the younger ones, the people who were not heard before. And I think that's where Trump comes in. And I think that's where Trump is able to do some of the things he does because he appealed to people that you barely heard from on such a grand scale. And that is these so-called white supremacists. That is these folks that lived in the trailer park in South Dakota who had a gun and smoked a cigar and used the N-word at will. He appealed to those folks. He brought in people who wasn't otherwise involved. And I just remember so vividly, like, wow, these young people, you never saw, at least I never saw so many young people get involved in that process. And that was, because of they attached themselves to Barack Obama.
For sure. And we know that, Kamala Harris pretty much had the same playbook. The only factor that we don't know about her run is if the Trump administration cheated. You know what I mean? Because she could have very well won. And we're having these conversations about these ballot machines and Pennsylvania and him, publicly saying that, Elon Musk, won Pennsylvania for him. So we really don't know if Kamala Harris did the same thing. We just don't know. And I think that conversation needs to be had more. But for some reason, politicians, I know Democrats are being cautious about moving forward with that conversation. And I get that, but as far as the media is concerned, there's enough facts. There's enough information out there to begin to start that narrative because we control the conversation. And so I think that's a message to let us know just who's running the media now, because that conversation is not being had.
Yeah, you're right. I wanted to ask you, you said you understand why Democrats are reluctant or however you put it to have that conversation. Why is that when the other side wasn't in 2020 when they clearly lost?
I mean, but that was really Donald Trump and, them following. That was really Donald Trump pushing that narrative. You had some Republicans,
they followed it, though.
They followed his lead, right?
Mhm.
But the Democratic Party, the DNC, and even Kamala Harris is not saying that. So it starts from the leader. Kamala Harris isn't saying that. So why should they? They could be having conversations about it. They could be building evidence about it, and we just don't know. But I understand why they haven't. I mean, Kamala Harris hasn't. All of the propaganda in 2020 started with Donald Trump, the leader of the party.
Yeah. Wow. Well, the conversations apparently is going to be forced on the media and the public with these lawsuits that are going on, because it's not just what we reported earlier today in Wisconsin. Yesterday we talked about Rockland County, New York, and there's lawsuits there. And now I read this morning that there's a handful of other areas in which they're filing suit about the election. So it might be forced upon people to have that conversation.
Right. And we still haven't really had conclusion about the conversation of the fake electors that the Republican Party put up to try to steal 2020. There were like over 15 fake electors in various states from across this country that put in fake information, and that conversation just kind of dwindled and went away.
Mhm.
And the media is not talking about that. And so, it's so much that's being thrown at us, but we can't forget. We cannot forget. And that was the lead up to possibly
Yeah.
why Kamala Harris didn't win, because the Republicans figured out how to cheat better.
Isn't that something? How to cheat better.
For
Oh
sure, they
man.
learned how to cheat better.
Wow. And so again, we have somebody. I wonder, Niall, we talked about Cardi B saying what she said about not speaking out. How many others who have voices, who have platforms, how many others are also taking that approach? Is that a thought that you've given any thought to that as well, seeing what Cardi B has said?
I mean, Cardi B has a lot going on too. She got a new man. These people still pushing her about that album. So I mean, her dabble in politics is not. I don't even think it's a 5-day-a-week type conversation for her.
Well, I mean, but
a
as far as
random
others,
conversation.
right, but are others? I'm asking, do you think that others with platforms such as hers are having that same dilemma?
I don't think that it's an issue, and I don't think it's a topic for them right now. Politics is not. I mean, I think that you see them speaking out about what's happening, about immigration,
Mhm,
about
mhm.
undocumented
Well, that's
immigrants.
what
So
she was
yeah,
talking about, though. That's what she was. The point is, she said she was afraid to speak out about that issue because he would probably deport more people just out of spite. And so I was wondering whether or not others with Cardi B's type platform. You got other big Latino
for
Black
sure.
celebrities,
And they're
yeah.
speaking out. Look at Doechii used her speech at the BET
Hmm.
Awards to speak out. So to answer your question, no, I don't think that's going to stop, but I think it's going to be issue oriented. People are going
Hmm.
to speak, celebrities are going to speak out on the issues that resonate with them. And
Right.
so, you heard a few people speak out about what's happening with the undocumented immigrants. You know what I'm saying? And it's gonna come down your corner. It's gonna be in your lane. So yeah, I think people speak on what resonates with them. And
Mhm.
so Cardi actually spoke about it was saying she's not going to speak about it, but she did speak out about it, and she said her
Well,
why.
yeah, well, she didn't say she's not going to speak about it. She just said why she hadn't been speaking about it. She was afraid to speak about it because she felt there would be retaliation toward people who, it'd be innocent, people would catch strays. And, this
Right,
guy
right.
is a vindictive dude.
And
He's
I think
very
that's in
vindictive.
part. Yeah, and I think that's part of speaking out, saying I'm not going
Yeah.
to speak out because he's a monster. So in a way, she's speaking out.
Right, that's
You know what I'm
true.
saying?
That's true. Yeah.
She's saying something.
Yeah, yeah, she is, and she's, who can argue with what she said about him being, he may take it out on these people if her or certain people, if Obama spoke out, if somebody that he just might take it out on people instead of taking the information and saying and thinking and giving some thought, because she was like at the end of her spaces, she said, I wish he would have some compassion.
Right. Some compassion. And to be quite frankly, I don't think the Democratic Party is ready to take on celebrities. There's a story coming out that the Democratic National Committee Vice Chair David Hogg has announced he will not be running for reelection for his spot on the committee. So we know that there was some turmoil going on over at the DNC. And his decision comes after members voted to redo the vice chair election on Hogg and Pennsylvania State Representative Malcolm Kenyatta. Now, Hogg said, "I came into this role to play a positive role in creating the change our party needs. It's clear that there is a fundamental disagreement about the role of vice chair." So this comes as DNC committee members voted to redo the election after Oklahoma DNC member Kaylin Freed challenged the way the election was conducted back in February. She alleged that it was unfairly gave the male candidates an advantage over the female vice chair candidates. And we know we had Kenya Clayton on, who was one of those women running for vice chair, and these two gentlemen won. She said she wasn't going to run again. But, the party clearly is not stable to even have celebrities tooting his horn right now. There's mixed emotions about Hogg. He wanted to run new candidates. The party wants to support, incumbents that are already there. Kenyatta put out a statement yesterday, so he's going to run again for his seat, making room, for a white woman to run, because I'm sure Kaylin Free is going to run again. And so there's still no Black female representation, and we voted 92% to save our democracy. And so I just think the party has a problem. And so there's nobody there, like going back to Obama, to bring us all together. And so you're going to have all these different people everywhere because our party is not unified.
Wow. Well, you have a guest.
And so with that conversation, I think this is great because we have congressional races that are going to be happening in 2026. So joining us now is Brook A. Butler. She's the National Political Director at the DCCC, which stands for Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. But I'm most excited, Brook, because I am a Beehive member too. And so we do have that in common. Let's start there for the party.
Very excited. I can't wait to go see Cowboy Carter next month.
I was there here.
Okay.
You're going to have a fabulous time. I went here in LA. And we're talking about America, right? And if there is somebody who is not carrying the flag and what it means to be an American today, it's definitely Beyonce. She is the American dream and hope that we need right now. Congratulations on your new appointment as National Political Director.
Thank you.
You've been with the DCCC for a while. For our Let It Be Known family who doesn't know, tell us what the DCCC is all about.
Yes. So we are a campaign committee. We are under the DNC umbrella, but we work specifically on House races to help make the majority win back the House or hold the House, depending on the cycle, and work directly for our House Democratic Caucus to ensure that they are reelected and have more seats so we can make progress in this country.
And so as we look at the congressional races that are leading into 2026, what are some of the states that we should be paying attention to in races?
Yeah, the House battleground is very, very large, but I think some of our top opportunities are we looking at this cycle are, some of the battleground states where Democrats came really close and down ballot just missed a few races. So places like Pennsylvania, Arizona, Michigan. In addition to that, we have some really exciting races in places like Wisconsin. We have incumbents we'll be protecting in Ohio, North Carolina, Nevada. So our House map, as you know, is a little bit of everywhere. And then we're excited to look to flip some seats, especially our map is pretty Midwestern and Southern when we look at where we're going to go try to build more power and take some seats back. So we're looking at places like Tennessee, Kentucky, Florida, to make sure we can flip the House.
Right. There was a lot of conversation in the party as it relates to the DCCC and its outreach to African American communities, even with staffing, representation of people of color, and just understanding who the Democratic Party's constituents are. It's larger than just it seemed like the candidates that the DCCC was putting up. So as the political director, I know that you have field directors and things like that. What is the plan for African American outreach?
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to be in this role and help to your point, advise and guide not only our candidates and campaigns in this role, but our committee and House leadership writ large about how we go about taking back the House and what that looks like, including engaging voters of color across the battlefield, but especially Black voters kind of earlier and often, as we know, as Black people. Often, for a long time, that wasn't happening across parties and across committees. And I think it's a really important thing to make sure folks understand what is happening and what the Trump administration is doing, what Republicans are doing to their benefits, to the things that voters need in order to survive, and what Democrats will do to make people's lives better. So, as far as like our Black, voter engagement and outreach, I think we know what works. It's interesting, at the top of the ticket, a lot of conversation is about a lot of the shifts away from Democrats, which did happen. But I will note that House Democrats actually were able to overperform generally across the map, but also with Black voters, and especially in places like the Midwest, where, I'm from Ohio, and a lot of people, I think, forget that Black people do live in the Midwest too. And so very excited to see a lot of that. And so we know what works, talking to folks and making the case about, how Democrats will make their lives better, what's going on the day-to-day, the things we're doing to lower costs, to make sure people can afford healthcare, to make sure that small businesses have the support that they need, that people are able to get quality education in this country, the things that we know the Black voters care most about. And we'll be doing it in ways that we know work, while it is, to your point, kind of field directors organizing, going out and talking to voters on doors, but also making sure that we are, in the places where they're receiving news, on the channels, on the websites, things like that, to make sure we're reaching people.
We talked a little bit about the DNC and the issue that's going on with the Vice Chair David Hogg. And one of the reasons that the Democratic Party was upset is because he wanted to run new candidates against incumbents. As the DCCC looks at the congressional races coming up, does the DCCC plan to just support incumbents, or are you guys also looking at fresh faces, new people?
Mm-hmm. Well, the DCCC's, larger goal is to win back the House and make the majority. So we really focus a lot of our kind of resources and investment and engagement on the majority making districts across the country. But one thing that we know is that we don't see a lot of engagement from voters, under the age of really 50 and especially under 40 a lot. I personally think that any kind of excitement, engagement of young voters, of new people, is important to not only the party, but the country. And I think that whether it's running for office or voting, it is good that young people are trying to meaningfully engage in our political system. So I'm always appreciative of that. I think that everyone who understands the stakes of the moment knows that, we got to take the House back first and foremost if we're going to stop the damage that is being done to people. I think obviously you look at even California, as you see some of the things that are happening now in the way the Trump administration is deploying the National Guard and the things that they've been doing to usurp power. It just is really bad for the country and where it could go, and we know that. So the infighting isn't really our focus as much as that. But what we all do agree on is that no matter who you are, if you are on this side, you know that the other side is the problem, right? They're doing things, as I noted, to harm people across this country, and that will continue to harm them even after they lose the majority in 2026. I'll say what I am excited about as far as not only some of our great candidates that we have and will have, I'm sure, as we look to recruit across the country, but some of even our incumbents who are millennials, who are younger and have made the majority, like Congresswoman Amelia Sykes in Ohio, like Congressman Pat Ryan in New York, who really can go out, they make the case, they overperform, and they have been elected and reelected because of the work that they do. So I think that at least as far as the DCCC is focused, I think we're excited to, work to bring in new fresh faces across the map and also make sure we reelect a lot of our incumbents who we need to make sure we can actually win the House.
Well, that's good to hear. We're going to see some fresh face candidates out there. So as the political director, talk to us about some of the priority issues of the DCCC. What are the American people saying they want to see?
So, I think as of now, right, things will go on over the next year and a half that may or may not change this. But, what we do know is that what voters care most about is their day-to-day lives, right? The things that are impacting them, like lowering the cost of groceries, making sure that people can afford their day-to-day goods and needs, the cost of housing in this country and what it's doing to people's pocketbooks, the impact of childcare. All of those things are the things that we know are really, really important to people and we'll be talking about throughout the trail. Again, as folks hit the campaign trail, what I know is like why we get to November 2026. Things can change as, every single day it's a bunch of executive orders and, the day-to-day kind of news cycle affects what people are saying they care about most. But what we know is people want accountability. People want their circumstances to change. People don't want the chaos that they are seeing as far as their retirements being affected, if they can retire at all, and things like that we know is happening because this administration is chaotic. And so we're hearing a lot from people about just what that feels like as they see it. And then they want people to come into office and get things done. They don't want people to just go to the, to the most extreme thing they can do and not work with one another. They really want to make sure that the country is working for them. I think most voters care more about what you're going to do to make their lives better when it comes down to what they want to hear, especially from congressional members, because, they're making the laws.
Right. You brought up the congressional members, and one of the things that we know about the Republican Party is that they stick to their talking points and they're good at lying sometimes. But if their talking point is a lie, they're good at pushing that through. And a lot of people feel like there's no real messaging coming out of the Democratic Party. What will the DCCC do to make the issues that you talked about resonate with people from all across this country? Because we see Project 2025, check. Is there a project coming out of the Democratic Party that people can see tangible things that the Democratic Party is going check?
Yeah, I think that we will be, first and foremost, we always do different research into understanding, where voters are, what they want, what they need. And, we always make sure we are clear about that. But I'll note some of our first actual ads, at least out of the DCCC this cycle, were actually in California, focused on AA and HPI voters. They were in various language, Vietnamese, Korean, Chinese, talking about the economy, talking about the impact on small businesses and what's happening across this country. We'll be making that case, especially as we have, Senate Republicans have now taken up kind of this big ugly bill that Trump has put forward and forced House Republicans to agree to, even when a lot of them actually didn't, as they're now noting, didn't even get the chance to read it while they passed it in the dead of night. And so we've been making the case to people about what the actual impact of that is as they look to take healthcare away from millions and millions of Americans so they can give tax cuts to give really taxpayer dollars to billionaires across this country and making sure that they are just getting the rich richer at the expense of the vast majority of Americans. I think first and foremost, we know more and more people need to hear about what's going on because, as I said, they made sure to do that around, 3 a.m. while most people were sleeping so that it wasn't getting coverage, so that people weren't able to actually know what they were doing. And it's really unfortunate that that's kind of, where this country has come to, but it's what they're doing. And so I think we'll be making the case, as we have been doing. We've been doing town halls across the country while Republicans are not. We've been going to their districts to hold town halls because they won't talk to and hear from the American people, and they're afraid to face them because of what they know they're doing. And so we'll be doing more things like that throughout the cycle. And I think people will see exactly the kind of fight that Democrats have and the vision that Democrats have for the country.
Yeah, I hope that we'll begin to have some more conversations with the DCCC as the races begin to pick up. But I just a tip, I like the big ugly bill. Trump is calling it the big beautiful bill. I would love to see the Democratic Party come out with some big ugly bill campaign. And you know what I mean? Like, one thing that Donald Trump is able to do is he's able to get these catchy phrases that like spread like wildfire. I think you're on to something with the big ugly bill. I think you take that back to the table for me, Brooke. Uh, but we would like to have more conversations with you about, as like I said, and key races, because I think what a lot of people don't understand is just because there's a race in Ohio, it doesn't mean that you can't participate. You could participate with your financial resources. You could make some phone calls from another state. And so I think that's also important for folks to know, is that just because the election is not in your state or congressional district, it still matters to flip those seats.
100%.
And so,
100%.
there's so there's a lot of messaging that we want to see happening out of the DCCC, and we hope that you come back and talk to the Black press about it.
Oh, no, we are always happy here at the DCCC to engage with the Black press, and I thank you for having me and being able to talk about this. It's always, obviously, as a Black person, the first Black political director at our organization, I'm always excited to talk to Black people about what we'll be doing. So would love to talk anytime throughout the cycle about what's going on.
Congratulations on your...
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Congratulations, and we look forward to talking to you again. Have a good one.
The big,
all right, Stacey is back.
Yeah, somebody said the big billionaire bill.
Huh?
Somebody said the big billionaire bill. I said somebody typed in the big billionaire bill.
If it's the big billionaire bill, the big billionaire bill, the big ugly bill, I mean, call it something. Let's get them talking points out there and call it something. So we talked about the DNC. Another story coming out this morning, late last night, is Medgar Evans' family is urging the Department of Defense and the Navy to reverse their position on removing his name from a naval ship. So, there's a pushback, Stacey. His family said in a statement, by attempting to remove the names of activists who fought with courage and honor for the citizens of their country, the Secretary of Defense sacrifices military values to revision the definition of patriotism. Now, this could be the second time Evers' name is erased. President praised Medgar Evans as a great American hero, but he also removed his name last March from a site on the Arlington National Cemetery website, which featured a section honoring Black Americans who fought the nation's wars. And so, this is the only power we have. A lot of times, Stacey, you say, what can we do? But sometimes the only thing you can do is just to resist, even if it is just a statement.
Yeah. Well, they want to put in these Confederate names, remove names of people of color and women. So, I guess resisting is, like you said, the only tool developed at this point, at least the only tool that's being used.
So, yeah, it's a lot going on in our country right now. And like, all we can do is resist. And so the protests are still happening across the country. We've seen over the past 24 hours protests in San Antonio, Chicago, New York, Texas. We know that Governor Abbott said yesterday that he's going to call in the National Guard into his state. So the question becomes, Stacey, what is Donald Trump going to do now? Is he going to send the National Guard to New York? Is he going to send it to Chicago? Is he going to send the Marines? He's created this wildfire, and what do you think he's going to do about it?
Well, I think he's. Yeah, well, I listen. I think he's going to continue. I think he's going to send the National Guard to other places as well. I think he's going to send American troops to other American cities. There's no question about it in my mind. I mean, look at that. Look
Yeah,
at that.
he's going to. Maxine Waters, she has been hitting the news cycle a lot, and she is. I mean, and you know what the funny thing is? Those crowds are bigger than the ones we have here in LA. You know that. So I'm like, what is he gonna do? Because the crowds are much bigger. Okay,
Mhm.
in New York, they were at a standoff with the police, and so it's like, what are you really gonna do now, Donald Trump? And you know, he's been quiet. What has he said in the past 24 to 48 hours? Very quiet. But they're saying, Maxine, like I was saying, Maxine Waters is saying that martial law is going to be his next step, and that's what he's gearing for. And as we talk about these elections that are coming up, Stacey, by him enforcing martial law, it puts into place where he can control elections, right? And he can control the people, because if martial law is imposed, civilian rights are suspended, military replaces local law enforcement, curfews, checkpoints, detainments without warrant. Okay. Protests can be forcefully ended, media can be censored, and you no longer have the right to assemble or speak freely. And that's what he wants.
That's the plan all along. I was talking to Barrington the other day, Barrington Salmon. Many might remember our buddy Barrington. And Barrington was always famous for coming on the program and saying they just need to burn it all down. And this is what's happening. It's being burned down. And I asked Barrington, I said, are you surprised that because it seems like he is going to resort to martial law? And I said, are you surprised that he's doing it now and not closer to the election? He says, no, he wants to get control of all that now. He's not thinking about down the road. He wants to do it now and shut down any talk of any election, which is really the point of all of this, is to declare martial law. And that way he's the undisputed king at that point.
You know, and it's like, you know, where is the Democratic Party to say, you know, be concerned, Donald Trump is moving towards martial law? What are the DNC's talking points? But they can't have any because they're still trying to figure out who their vice president. They had an election in February for the party, and they're still, here we are in June, and they're still trying to go backwards to get it right. Meanwhile, Donald Trump and the Republican Party, they're moving forward with their talking points. And they are, like I said, they're checking the box. What is the Democratic Party doing?
That is live in Los Angeles.
Greer is saying is live and from Los Angeles. Is that what are we seeing here?
That is live from Los Angeles.
Is that in DC? Is that getting ready for the military parade?
Oh, that one's DC. The earlier one was
DC.
The earlier one was Los Angeles. She mentioned. That is, I guess, they're preparing.
Yeah, that is Washington, D.C.
Wow. $143 million at least for this clown show. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable.
So yeah, so he's getting ready for his parade. Wow, the No Kings protests are happening all across the country on Saturday as well. Over 100 protests are planned for Saturday to coincide with his parade and birthday celebration. Then you have the Pope, who helped sell out a stadium in Chicago, who will be delivering a speech via video, a live stream during the time of Donald Trump's parade. So you have the Pope, you have the No Kings protest, and then you have the social media campaign where they're telling everybody to post pictures of Barack Obama. If you have pictures with him, if you have a favorite picture of him or his beautiful family, they just want you to flood social media. So it'll be interesting how Saturday plays out.
Mike V says Trump 10th is coming. It's just horrible stuff that we are witnessing. Yeah, the DC, and someone mentioned the roads. The roads. What's going to happen to the roads? That's Mayor Bowser's concern as well. One of her many concerns about this birthday celebration of Trump, because that's really what it is. Military parade is the secondary thing to this. That's all part of his dream scenario, to have the military, in which he called weak people, among other things. These are people he's disparaged. He's disparaged the U.S. military and U.S. military personnel. And yet, he's putting on a $143 million badge that features the military.
Right. So yeah, Saturday is going to be an interesting day to see how it unfolds. The question is, how will you participate? Will you be at a protest? Will you be watching the Pope? Will you be posting pictures on social media? Or will you be watching Trump-teenth, as somebody put it? The option is yours. And hopefully we'll still keep that freedom to decide, because at the direction he's going, this time next year, he'll want the only thing you can watch or participate in is his birthday celebration. And that's a scary thought. That is a scary thought, which takes us back to the midterms. The midterms are going to be crucial in this country for people to decide, do you want to continue on the Trump clan administration train, or do you want to take a left or a right and do something different? And that's just really what the choice is: messaging or no messaging from the Democratic Party. But moving on from politics, yesterday, pop culture, Black culture lost a voice, a soul, and an icon, especially in the 90s. Pop culture journalist Ananda Lewis died at the age of 52 after a brave battle with stage 4 cancer. Now, Ananda had a long career in media, starting at BET's Teen Summit. She later moved to MTV as a VJ. She had her own talk show, the Ananda Lewis Show, and she was a radio host. She worked with Radio 1, Kathy Hughes' radio station, in the early 2000s. And in 2020, she made her cancer diagnosis public and became an advocate for early screening. So social media has been flooded with pictures and memories of Ananda, from her days when she was really good friends with Aaliyah, to her time at Teen Summit. She crossed so many lives and meant so much to Black culture. And so prayers go out to her friends and family.
Yeah, she spoke about she went public in 2020, like we said, about early screenings. This after, by her own admission, that she just did not do that. She used other forms of, I guess, self-care or whatever. And she realized, and in her own words, really realized how much of a mistake she made by not getting screenings and mammograms and things of that nature. And it was just a shame to see that this real, I mean, you talk about icons, but use that word, that I think that word is thrown around too easily. But she was certainly that. She was an icon. One of my personal fondest memories, I took my cousin to a Knicks game. They were playing the Toronto Raptors in the playoffs. And Ananda sat next to us, and my cousin was losing his mind. And I spoke to my cousin back in January. We had a conversation about Ananda back in January, and he kept telling me how grateful he was that I took him to that game. And he just couldn't. The only thing he could take from that game was Ananda Lewis, and he got to say hi to her. And I mean, he flirted with her and everything else, but he just loved some Ananda Lewis and was tickled to death that we sat next to Ananda Lewis on the floor at Madison Square Garden. And she was just such a such a amazing person, amazing talent, I should say.
Well, yeah, her contributions to the culture, from, Teen Summit, that was such an iconic show and so relevant to talking to, and as we talked about BET, the evolution of BET, when we talked about Video Soul, when we talked about Midnight Love, Teen Summit was in that conversation too. It just wasn't a music show,
Yes,
but on a Saturday morning, you looked forward to waking up. You didn't know what celebrity was going to be on there, but she had a way of using celebrities to be to empower young people, right? You may
mhm,
like their song, but they might come on Teen Summit and tell you about a HBCU or how important it was to build your finances. And so she had that mix of a pop culture, civic engagement, and empowerment from Teen Summit, and then moving over to MTV during the time where you had the Rock the Vote, or Choose, all of the campaigns. So I love the way she was able to mix pop culture and community and civic engagement. And it was just, and then she had her own talk show. And so she was about that life of empowering our community, and you rarely see that anymore. Like the Ananda Lewis's that empower our community in such a way. You just don't see it. You have all of these podcasts, but they're all about self.
yes.
But she was all about giving in a time and in our culture where we really needed it, and we just don't see that as much anymore.
Yeah, I see in the chat a lot of RIP. Dr. Marilyn says that sad that she didn't believe in traditional
I think we
medicine.
have a little delay.
Yeah, yeah, we do. Trixie mentioned that she tried herbal methods. I said herbal. She really spoke about regrets. Dr. Joni Toole says for not getting screened herself. Brave of her to speak on this to help hopefully save other lives in the future. And Mike V makes this point too, that it doesn't help now that you have an administration that defunds cancer research for Black folks. So all of that is certainly true. And it's what is really true here is that, folks, this was, as you all know, an incredible talent. And it's a shame that at such a young age, 52 years old, that she's no longer with us.
Yeah. But her impact, you saw, I wish she was able, well, hopefully she's able to see the impact, because social media is just flooded with her. And that's a beautiful thing to see that, we might not have spoke about her in a while, but people do remember her contributions to the culture. So as we say, prayers to her friends and family. And thank God for Ananda Lewis.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to our Black History facts.
Absolutely. So on this date in 1963, we spoke about him earlier. Civil rights leader Medgar Evers was assassinated in Jackson, Mississippi. He was shot in the driveway of his home by a white supremacist, a guy named Byron De La Beckwith. Evers was a prominent figure in the civil rights movement, as you know, and his death was a major blow to the movement. De La Beckwith was not convicted of the crime until 1994, 3 decades after the murder on June 12th, 1963.
Yeah, I think we have a delay. But I'll keep it going. We're still celebrating June. It's Black Music Month and contributions to the culture. So this is today's fact. The year was 1971. And on this day, June 12th, Roberta Flack achieved commercial success with her song You've Got a Friend with Donny Hathaway. Now, this would become her first song to appear on the Billboard Top 100, and it also started her winning streak. You've Got a Friend is a cover a song originally performed by singer Carole King, and it was the first single from Flack and Hathaway's duet album, Roberta Flack and Donny Hathaway. So like I said, this would start her winning streak, and she went on to receive Grammy nomination for this song. But soon after the song's success, Flack went on to win 4 Grammys. Okay, check this out. In 1973, she won Record of the Year for the first time ever, I Saw Your Face. In 74, she won 2 Grammys, one for Record of the Year and Best Pop Vocal Performance by a Female. Both were for Killing Me Softly. And then in 1975, she won her 4th Grammy for Feel Like Making Love, which she won for Best Pop Vocal Performance. And we know that Black folks traditionally win the R&B. So for her to win Best Pop Vocal was a huge deal back in that time. And so today for Black Music Month, we celebrate the music of Miss Roberta Flack.
Just awesome, awesome, awesome. I love Lauryn Hill's cover of Killing Me Softly. Several people covered it, but Lauryn Hill's cover was absolutely the best. But of course, Roberta Flack is the originator.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Yeah, and folks, our Black-owned newspaper of the day is the Reporter newspaper, Akron, Ohio's newspaper serving African Americans. The Reporter has been documenting the community's history since 1969. It established that year by William R. Ellis Sr. The Reporter was founded as a response to a lack of coverage by the mainstream press. The Ellis family continues to operate this weekly newspaper that records the lives and perspectives of their African American residents, covering everything from church histories, biographies, and social events to articles about current issues. The Reporter newspaper is our newspaper of the day, our Black-owned newspaper of the day.
All right. And of course, there's a lot happening, and you can keep up from what's happening from the Black perspective at blackpressusa.com. We apologize for the internet delays this morning, family. Thank you for hanging in with us.
Absolutely.
And
We'll
talk
see
to
you
you tomorrow.
tomorrow.